friend and like a second father to me. I don't want to say too much. I want you to hear his story about his.
I'm not that damn old.
I want you to hear his story about his experience with the criminal justice system. He has a really good story. All right, go ahead, John Guy.
So, first of all, I'd like to say hello to all the students here at the Manor College. You are.
No, this is Harcum. This is Harcum, not Manor.
Okay, excuse me. Harcum College. And you are blessed to have a wonderful professor, Professor Maza. We've known each other for many years. We met when she interned with me many years ago, and she has always been extremely powerful in the field of criminal justice from the time that she first started with us, and she's doing wonderful things. And I really thank her for inviting me to your class. So I'm the executive director of the TCRC Community Healing Center, and we're at 3609 North Broad Street, and we've been here a little more than a year, and we've been in this area of North Philadelphia for about 4 or 5 years. We've been in existence for about 7 or 8 years, and we started out as a Reentry organization, and Reentry is assisting formerly incarcerated people when they come home from prison to find jobs, find housing, access any necessary services, and move themselves forward so that they can reintegrate with their family and just build a new life. But we quickly came to see that just finding somebody a job or a room or a small apartment or helping them rent a house wasn't the entirety of what they needed to move themselves forward. Because there are so many elements that go into criminal justice. In your criminal justice class, you are probably going to be looking at the court system, the police, and now in this country, there's a great deal of controversy on the police end of criminal justice. Criminal justice is really the police force, which is supposed to uphold public safety and arrest criminals. Then the court system, which is supposed to administer justice, which in the United States does a really terrible job. And then the prison system, which is supposed to house people who are a danger to society. And originally the concept of criminal justice was to rehabilitate people so that they could return to society. In fact, the word penitentiary, the first prisons in this country were Quaker prisons, the Walnut Street Jail and other jails that Quakers in Pennsylvania created. And penitentiary actually comes from the word penitent, which means you're supposed to repent and have a space where you can think about the wrongs you did to society and then work toward being a better person. But that has evolved into a system of punishment where folks are really housed in terrible conditions, and the focus for many years has no longer been rehabilitating people, but just housing people and protecting society from people. So how I came to be where I am today is kind of a long story, but I'm going to condense it for you. I got about an hour to talk to you, so I'm going to talk for about a half an hour, tell my story, and what I'd really like is for you to ask me questions about what I've said or any questions on criminal justice. So is that cool? All right. So although I'm now the executive director of the TCRC Healing Center, I wasn't always. I used to be a gangster. I was a serious gangster. I was a bank robber, and I was involved in criminal activity. But I was a smooth criminal, as Michael Jackson used to say. And crime back in the day was different from how crime is today. We weren't breaking in for to folks' houses, shooting everybody for the paper. As a gangster, if we had a beef with another crew or set or another person, we weren't, shooting into a crowd. We were going to get our man. The entire concept of criminal behavior and gangsterism today has really gotten far away from what it was in the past, and now it's people shooting kids or old ladies on the street because instead of them aiming a gun the way they're supposed to, they're shooting like this, and you can't aim a gun right like that. And there's no honor. One of the things that was our hallmark back in the day is if we were involved in criminal activity and I got caught, that was it. Nobody else who I knew or nobody else who was involved with me in criminal activity was going to come to jail because the police caught me. But now folks snitch for a Big Mac and fries, and the entire criminal court system is built upon the prosecutors offering deals whereby people trade their life for somebody else's life, which is really terrible. So, as I said, back in the day, I used to rob banks, and my first federal sentence was a 16-year sentence, and I went to Terre Haute Penitentiary, and I was there for about 5 years, and that was in 1981. And back in the day, the federal system operated on what was called the old law, which meant that you did 1/3 of your time, and then you were eligible for parole, and you were able to come home if the parole board sent you home. Subsequently, so I did 7.5 years on 16. I served my time in Terre Haute Penitentiary, Raybrook Federal Institution, and I came home from Danbury, Connecticut, which was then a male joint, but it's now a female fed joint, and that was my first bit. I was home for about 3.5 years, but I still hadn't got the street, gangsterism, robbing banks out of my system. I should say robbing banks was the most fun you could have with your clothes on. And I was still caught up in the concept of fast money.
The inappropriate John dive, but go ahead.
But the thing about fast money is that fast money don't last, and you were always looking over your shoulder for the police to come. But I was still caught up in that mentality, and during the course of my sentence, I didn't really work on myself. I worked in a factory, I got my associate's degree, and because I had a short sentence, because 7.5 years is a short sentence, I was still focused on the street. So I came home, and for a little while I did the right thing, but then that fast money kept on calling me, and even though I had a business, I started robbing banks, put money in the business, stacking paper, and eventually 3.5 years later, I got caught. And this time, the federal laws had changed, and they were no longer under the old law, they were under the new law. And under the new law, you did 85% of your time. And that's a hell of a thing. So when I got a 20-year sentence for bank robbery and weapons charges, I had to do 18 years on 20. And how the feds work is like your first year, they just move you from jail to jail, and they try to break you down and get you to tell, get you to snitch. But I was dead. I mean, they was just riding me for nothing, because as I explained to you earlier, I come from an era where we don't tell the police nothing. So I took my sentence, and they sent me to Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary, which is out in Western Pennsylvania. I was there for about 6 or 7 months, and then I was working in the library, and I had the opportunity to meet Dr. Matula Shakur. I don't know if anybody knows that name, but he's the stepfather of Tupac Shakur. He's a black revolutionary and the co-founder of various revolutionary groups, and he was charged with masterminding a series of armed car robberies, which was, supposed to be sustaining Black Power activists. So he was doing a 60-year-old law sentence. So we got acquainted and we became friends. And shortly after that, I was involved in the organization of a work strike in the federal system against the crack law. I don't know how many folks know about the crack law, but if you're a criminal justice major, that's something that you should know. In the 80s and the 90s, the crack law was that if you got convicted of crack instead of powder, your sentence was 100 times more severe than powder. So if you had 4 ounces of powder and you got caught, you might get 5 years. If you had 5 ounces of crack, you might get 100 years, which is crazy. It's a very racist law because who sells crack? Black and Hispanics. Who sells powder? High-level Hispanics and white boys. So it was a racist law that was slanted against the Black urban community, and we organized a work strike against that. And I spent a year in the hole, solitary confinement, and then I was transferred to USP Atlanta, where I was for the next 12 years. And about 7 months later, Doc was transferred down there, and we began to organize what we called a Circle of Consciousness, which was a group of prisoners who were intellectual, who were writers, who were artists, who were musicians. And we taught and we mentored the younger guys in the prison, and anybody in the prison was welcome to join our association, as long as they weren't hot, and we even went so far as to call together all the OGs of all the sets, from the cities and the gangs. And USP Atlanta was one of the few, if not the only, federal penitentiary in the country where a hot dude couldn't walk on the compound. If you were hot and you came from Chicago or from New York or from Philly or from Baltimore, because federal prison is all cities, then what would happen is the OGs of that set would ask to see your paperwork. If they determined you were hot, you had to go up top, which means you had to go to protective custody. And if you didn't go, you got stabbed or you got dealt with. That was the only sanctioned violence in the penitentiary. We came together and we formed a pact that there'd be no murders and no violence in the penitentiary, and that all the beefs that might be between a ordinary prisoner would be settled by the OGs of their respective cities. And we brought peace to the penitentiary. We brought education to the penitentiary. Doc invited the University Georgia State University Black Studies Department, under the leadership of Dr. Akinyele Umaja, to come in and teach classes. And we created a university inside of the prison, because at that time in 1994, Congress had decided that there'd be no more Pell Grants, no more college classes. So one semester, they just came and said, this is your last semester. At the end of the semester, turn your books in, and there was no more college. So we formed our own college and we taught ourselves. So we had a wonderful family environment, a educational environment, a no murder environment that was the talk of the entire federal system. And guys were trying to transfer to USP Atlanta from all over the country, because it was the only place you could go where there was no hot guys. And understand how important that is, because people who will trade their life, let's say, for example, I did a crime and there was 4 or 5 guys who did crime with me. If I told on those guys, and I brought them into the system, then I'm destroying 4 or 5 families. Yes, the police got me. Maybe my life is over for the next 10, 15 years. But in order to lessen my sentence, I'm going to bring 4 or 5 guys in and give them time. That's despicable. There's no honor in that. And you can't trust people who'll do that. So when we decreed that nobody hot could be on our compound, that was like a paradise for real dudes. And the authorities fought against that, and eventually, about maybe 6, 7 years down the road, they took the unprecedented step of decommissioning that prison, changing it from a high-level prison to a medium, and transferring us out. And they transferred us all over the country just to break up the circle of consciousness and to break up the idea that we could control our own destiny. Because understand in criminal justice that being incarcerated is a society like any society. You have guys who are smart, you have guys who are college educated, you have guys who are muscle, you have guys who are serious murderers, you have all levels of men, just as you do in society. So we used to say that in any penitentiary, if you give everybody in the penitentiary $1,000, at the end of the month, maybe 15, 20 guys would have everybody's money. Because you had so many serious hustlers, and not just from different cities, but all over the world. The difference in the federal system as opposed to the state system is you have guys from all over the country and all over the world. So, for example, I was OG of the Philly crew. Now, how that worked is, with the feds, you have a number. My number is 32786-066. Now, the 32786, that just means that I was the number 32,786 who came through Philly. The real part of that number was 066. That designated where you were from. So, as a Philly brother, any prison that I went to, my job was, as soon as I got to that federal prison, is where the 066 crew, where the 066 posse, because that's going to be my people in that prison. And we had sets and community groups, and every city had their own set. If you're from DC, New York, Atlanta, Cincinnati, every city had their set, and usually everybody had those last 3 digits, unless you had caught a crime in another city and you had their number, but you still rep your city. And then in addition to that, you had the Bloods, Crips, Gangsters Disciples, Mexican Mafia, Dirty White Boys. You had so many groups. So the federal prison is a dangerous place, but it's also an instructive place. Because in federal prison, most of the crimes that you are charged with in federal prison is financial. If you're in a gang, you're selling drugs, or you're money laundering, or you're robbing banks. I mean, federal prison is not rapists and the burglars and that bullshit. It's folks who are actively getting money. And who gets money? Smart people. So you are in a place where you are surrounded by so much game, as to be incredible. So one of our tasks was to teach young brothers, yes, you've been a Blood, or yes, you've been a Crip, or yes, you've been, doing a criminal activity in your city, but take that knowledge and experience and take all the game you got, and when you go back to your city, turn it to something positive. So in order for us to do that, what we had to do is teach. So we had classes on a wide variety of things, culture, history, because a lot of young brothers had never been out of the city. I knew brothers from Miami who had never been out of their hood. They'd never been to downtown Miami. Because a lot of young boys, they grow up, especially in the drug game, as a runner first, and then they might get their first package, and then they start dealing, but they're centralized. Now, of course, some brothers, when they did get money, they traveled, but it was usually on a criminal tip. I know a lot of guys who had never had a regular job, so, and I know a lot of guys, one of my jobs, I always kept a lot of jobs, all right? I mentioned I worked in a library. I like to be a librarian because that's where the books was. That's where the knowledge was. And in the education department, that's where the learning was. So in Lewisburg, at the time I was there, I started working as a GED instructor because I had a AA degree. And in every joint I was in, I worked to educate young brothers around me because some brothers couldn't read and write. And you can be a serious gangster, and be selling drugs on the street. As long as you can account money, you're going to make it. But if you can't read and write, you're never going to rise above a level of criminal behavior. So in order to educate people, you have to... Doc used to say that one of the problems of our endeavor to move people forward was varying levels of consciousness. We had brothers who couldn't read and write. We had to teach them that. We had brothers who were struggling to get a GED. We had brothers who were smart, who were college graduates. We had brothers who were at the various stages of learning. So we had to coordinate our curriculum to include everybody, and then assign the brothers who were more skilled and more educated to mentor those who were not. So we could bring everybody up to a level of understanding so we could function. And that was a daunting task. And I will say that the work that I've done, I came home in 2009. I've been home for 10 years. And so I did when I first came home is I had a dream about building my own nonprofit, building my own business. But I know you just can't jump out of a prison cell and jump into an office. So I believed it was necessary for me to connect with people who were doing serious work on the street, learn from them, and then couple that newfound knowledge with my knowledge from the joint, and my knowledge from the 18 years that I spent inside teaching. So when I first came home, my first real job in human services was with Goodwill Industries. A lot of folks might know Goodwill. You might shop in their stores, but what a lot of folks don't realize is that in addition to Goodwill having stores and their mission being to help disabled and handicapped people, they have a large section where they deal with formerly incarcerated people. They have structured workshops. So I worked at a structured workshop at 7th and Arch. That was my first real job. And I went from there to Gardenzia. And I immersed myself in the world of substance abuse because so many of us, when we come home, we have substance abuse problems. Because when you're in, the world of crime, you smoking herb, you hitting that coke, you popping pills, you doing all that. And when you come home, that world can't be a world anymore. So you may need to go to a drug facility. When you are incarcerated, you don't have the same access to drugs. So a lot of folks get clean while they're behind the wall. But what happens when you walk through that gate and the whole world of drugs is in front of you? And you really haven't worked on the mental that says, that's no longer my lifestyle. Those who have been in the world of drugs know that people, places, and things are the triggers for more drug activity. So you have to overcome that. So I work for Gardenzia in the substance abuse part and in the housing part. And then I moved from there when I got my bachelor's degree, and I worked with Pathways to Housing, which is an organization that focused on housing for the homeless. Because all those things interlock, because many folks, when they come home, unless they have a family structure, they become homeless. I had a guy this morning in my office who I took over to 26 and seems to be more to a recovery house, that I know through Project Home, and they housed him. There's nothing worse than being homeless. When you're homeless and don't have an address, you can't function in society. So what I tried to do was incorporate all the things that I could see we went through as formerly incarcerated people, and then at a certain point, I was ready to, and when I started my first nonprofit, I was still working at them places because I was smart enough to know that in order to be successful, you have to have an income as you're doing what you're doing. So when I met Professor Maza, I was down in the Friends Center at 15th and Race, and we were doing our work there, and that's where I met her, and that's where our association began. But all through my journey, through prison, through coming home, my focus has been, how can we help those who are incarcerated turn their lives around? And Doc used to say that the revolution begins within. And he was a tremendous teacher, motivator, historian, Black nationalist, who really laid the foundation for us and showed us an example of what a strong Black man should be. And he discounted a lot of the bullshit that was in our thinking, because I thought when I was robbing banks and I was, giving money to the community and taking care of the family, I was engaging in revolutionary acts. But he showed me that the real revolutionary act is going to work every day, being faithful to your wife, taking care of your children, being a strong Black presence in your community. And that's what we taught guys who were inside, and that's what we teach now at the TCRC Healing Community at 3609 North Broad Street. And also a large part of what we do is when COVID-19 hit, the entire world changed. That's why you're sitting on Zoom now instead of being in a classroom, because your world has changed. And a lot of folks are not realizing that COVID-19 has literally changed how we function as a society. Many jobs are seeing that. I don't need a huge office. My folks can do their job remotely, and that's changed. There's a certain level of job that's never going to change. If you're a restaurant worker, or if you're a mechanic, or you work in certain industries, yes, you have to be there physically doing that work. But COVID has changed education, it's changed corporations. Many of the huge office buildings downtown are virtually empty, and those folks are working remotely. Now, at some point in time, it may alter, but it's really changed how we see business in this country. It's also changed how we see family and relationships, because the quarantine and the isolation really made people value relationships more. And when you couldn't see your family, if you didn't live in the same house. So I think that as the world changes, we have to see how criminal justice will change and how we will move forward. Right now, the courts are closed, and many cases have just been postponed until the courts reopen, which means that some folks have been able to get out on bail, but other folks, their case has just been more or less in hiatus, and their future is uncertain. Everything has changed. When COVID first hit, I contracted COVID-19 due to my father, who's 93. His home health care aide came to work sick and infected me, and I caught COVID, and I was in the hospital for 8 days and was extremely sick. Trust me, folks who say that COVID-19 is fake, you needed to be there. I mean, I don't wish it on nobody, but for folks who can't think, who won't wear masks, and who think this is a joke, I have friends, I have associates who I've loved and cared about, and they're no longer here because of COVID-19. One of my godfathers, who's been my Uncle AJ, who's been in my life my entire life, he died last month from COVID-19. So it's a terrible thing. And when I had COVID, I was hospitalized. I'm a big social media guy, so I actually videotaped my hospital stay, certain aspects, and I put it on social media, to let folks know what's going on. And then when I came home, I did more things around COVID. And when folks was saying that COVID was over, I was one of the few voices that said, no, keep wearing your mask, keep on doing what's necessary because it's not over, and it's roared back with a vengeance. But during COVID, we've done a lot of remote work, but one thing we really saw was that because of unemployment and a lack of jobs, there was a food scarcity. So we linked with sharefoods.org, and now every Friday we do a huge food giveaway. For those of you who are familiar with Broad Street, we are right above Broad Dairy, and we give away 12 skids of food every Friday from 9 p.m. to 2 p.m. And we give away chicken and eggs and milk and produce and grapes and fruit, and we have a line down the street. And we feel like that is now an important part of our work, because the world has shifted. The world has changed, and people cannot, whether or not they can afford to feed their family, having additional food is of great value to their family. So we're proud to do that work. So in addition to the work that we do, helping folks find jobs, helping people to reenter, because reentry is difficult. When you come home and you've been away from your kids, when I come home, I've been away from my kids for 18 years. And even though phone calls, visits, it's not the same as being an everyday father. And you got to fit back into the pattern of their lives. And that's very difficult. And for a female, when she comes home, she may be trying to retrieve her kids from DHS or from kinship care or from her family, and that's difficult. So there are many different aspects of reentry, criminal justice that you have to consider when you're talking about the work that we do here at the TCRC Community Center. And the final point I want to make is we changed the focus and changed our name from TCRC Philly, which stands for the Center for Returning Citizens, to TCRC Community Healing Center, because one of the primary things that you have to do when you come home from prison is heal. Not only heal from the trauma that you experienced while you were in prison, and trust me, it was trauma. When I was in Lewisburg, we were beefing with Aryan Brotherhood. And the Aryan Brotherhood is a white gang in prison, and in order to get into a gang, you got to kill a black guy. That's how you get into the gang. So it's always a constant battle. We used to sleep with knives under our mattress so they wouldn't sneak up on us. That's trauma, and there's varying aspects of trauma, not only for the prisoners, but for their wives. If you're away from your wife for 5-10 years, that's trauma on you, that's trauma on her. If your children are growing up without you, that's trauma. So a focus of criminal justice has to be, how do you heal the trauma of families? Because just because you incarcerate a person, you're impacting their entire family, their mother and father who loves them, their extended family, and you miss everything. I was doing an interview with a journalist earlier who was, she's doing an article about incarceration, and she asked, why are you incarcerated? What do you miss out of family life? And we're on the phone, but if I hadn't been on the phone, I looked at her crazy. We miss everything. You miss weddings, you miss funerals, you miss your kids growing up. You know, I miss my daughter's first day of school. I miss my son's basketball game. Everything that a family does, you miss. And the only time you have with your family is 15 minutes on the phone or 4 or 5 hours in the visiting room. And that's not enough to parent, to raise children, and to screw relationships. That's why so many girlfriends, boyfriends, lovers, husbands and wives break up, because you're no longer able to fulfill the responsibilities to your mate. Whether it's financial, whether it's romantic, emotional, you can no longer do that because you're incarcerated and they're in the world. So that's the first half hour. And now I would like to shift to question and answers. And let me say this. There's nothing that you can ask me that I won't answer. So, who's first?
He's telling the truth. Ask him whatever you want.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, what's your name?
Tanya Starks.
Tanya, how you doing? Go ahead, Tanya.
I was in the bathroom when you first came on. What did you say your name was again?
Jondhi, Jondhi, Harrell, Harrell.
Oh, okay.
Google me. My grandkids say I'm semi-famous.
Well, first I would like to thank you for sharing your story. And also, I encourage you for what you're doing in the city of Philadelphia.
Thank you.
You said it was called CRC?
No, TCRC.
CCRC?
Yeah, TCRC.
Okay.
Yeah, TCRC Philly.
I can show you the website. I can pull up the website real quick and show you the screen so that you guys can see what the website is. I actually designed it myself. Here it is right here. It's tcrccommunityhealingcenter.com. Can you see that?
Yes. And that's at Broaden. Where is it at?
It's in between Broaden Erie and Broaden Venango, right across from Mount Zion Church, right next door to City View Pizza.
Okay. I know a couple of guys who've come through there.
Okay, cool. And
yeah.
And listen, if you know any families, and you know, I encourage you guys, come through on Friday if you're available. You know, we give away the best food in the city. We're associated with sharefoods.com, and they give us some incredible food. They give us boxes of chicken meatballs, patties, chicken strips, all kind of produce, fruit. In fact, tomorrow we're going to be down at the Net at 2701 North Broad Street, and we're going to be giving away apples, grapes, and produce from
At the Net?
At the Net.
The Net. Okay.
Yeah, from 12 to 3.
And I see up here, Miss Maza, you put internship. Need an internship. Is that something else?
Yes, we definitely encourage interns.
Guys, okay, are you hiring?
Actually, we're not hiring because most of our staff is working remotely, and
Right.
We have a youth crew, and the youth crew helps us with the food giveaway. You know, so because the state has not designated us as a essential business, you know, so actually, you know, we're not supposed to be open, but we think we're essential to our community. You know, how can we not be essential? You know, so we're here at least Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We're here,
Okay.
and then we work remotely. You know, the rest of the time.
Okay.
And we have like we're always looking for volunteers. Like unfortunately, I can't go and help volunteer because of my illnesses, and I take care of my mother. But we're always looking for volunteers to help us give out food. And we've had a lot of good experiences. We've had interns that came to the Made in America concert. Remember, they loved that. They got to see Jay-Z.
There's a lot of perks.
Yeah, there's a lot of perks.
When we did we worked on the Meek Mill campaign, you know, and we've done a lot of things that have really benefited the city. We were instrumental in electing Larry Krasner as the DA. We put in work.
And don't forget about about the Eagles. Remember, we got the social justice grant from the
Oh yeah,
Philadelphia
yeah.
Eagles.
The Eagles have supported us. They've given us money 3 years in a row, and invited us down to the games. You know, we were right on the field. I mean, yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. And some of these opportunities that we get offered, we actually invited a bunch of the youth to the Made in America concert, and some of our clients even got to sit in VIP. Actually,
Yeah, we
So-
took 25 people to Made in America.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Harrell?
Well, I have another one since nobody else is saying anything.
Somebody got some questions.
Appreciate him for all his work he does.
Thank you. Say your next question.
Okay.
Tanya.
When you robbed the banks,
Mhm.
look, you smiling when you said when I said
Listen, I ain't gonna lie to you. I was a serious bank robber. You know,
Okay.
I'm serious about everything I do.
Okay.
Well organized, well planned. I never been in a bank more than 3 minutes of my life.
Okay, really?
I had a write up one time in the I robbed a bank in Newtown, which is in Bucks County, and the police said when we received the call, we were there within 3 minutes of receiving the call, and the bank robber was nowhere in sight, nowhere in town. This was a totally professional job. And when I read the paper, I said, "Amen."
Don, I know you talked about incarceration affecting your relationship with your kids. Do you think your relationship has gotten better? Or do you see that some of your relationship with some of your kids are a little different? Because I know my relationship with my father is a little bit different versus my sister.
Well, I say that with kids, it depends on individual kids. I have 4 daughters and a son, and 3 daughters, are from one woman, and then Pasha's from CJ, and my son is also from my former wife Alice. But I think it depends on the ages of your kids when you were incarcerated and how they were able to interact with you. Like my daughter Lashika, she was the most engaging of all my kids when I was in. She would write letters, and she was the kid in the family who always tried to, send me pictures and keep me up on what was going on in the family. And as she grew up and she had kids, she did that, because when she was, I don't know, I guess around 12 or 13. And when I came home, she's, grown with kids. My son has been a little more rocky because, he really felt that I wasn't there, for most of his life. And I wasn't, because he was actually born when he was 3 months, my wife was 3 months pregnant with him when I was incarcerated for my first bit, so he literally, first time I held him was in a county jail, so he literally, the first 6 years of his life, I was incarcerated. And then I was home for 3.5 years, and he was just getting used to having a father, and then I'm gone for 18. So we had serious issues of abandonment, because he felt like, I wasn't there most of his life, and, we're still working through that. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not, but that's something I take full responsibility for. And I've always given my children and my grandchildren the latitude to say whatever they need to say to move relationship forward. I keep it respectful, but sometimes it's gotten, contentious, because kids need to feel like their parents love them and they're going to be there when they need them. And as parents, if we're not there when they need us, we have to accept it. We got to eat that, so one thing I did is while I was incarcerated, once I got to a certain level of consciousness, I took parenting classes and then I taught parenting classes. And in my parenting classes, I used to say, one of the first things I'm going to teach you in this class is you can't be a good father if you're in prison. Because a good father is there for their children. But this class is going to teach you how to be the best possible father you can be under the circumstances. And I try to do that. I worked 2 or 3 jobs in the joint, I didn't ask for money. I sent money home, and I, helped my kids with their schoolwork on the phone. I spent all my phone time on my kids. I wasn't calling females, doing ridiculous stuff. I was focused on my kids. And I spent my entire bit trying to maintain that relationship. So by virtue of that, when I came home, I just had to build a relationship. And my sister gave me some of the best advice that, I could ever have, because my sister Lynn is my heart. And she was really there helping to raise my kids while I was gone. And, she was a conduit, even more than my wife, because we got divorced, onto our relationship. But Lynn said, when you come home, your kids have their own life. You can't be the godfather, because like as a black man and as a black gangster, you think yourself, as a godfather of the family. But she was like, what you got to do is fit into their life and see what their needs are, and don't try to run things. Let them come to you with their needs that you can fulfill, but be cognizant of the fact that they're grown now, they're building their own families, and they still need you as a father, but not in the same way that they needed you when they were little. And that was good advice. And that's something that I teach here, for guys coming home. Let me say this. 2 of my daughters, Tanisha and Elisa, aren't mine by blood, because their mother had them after we broke up, and I'm incarcerated. But I still treated them like the other kids in the family, because they're part of the family. I can't treat them any different. And that's something that I really try to impart to young boys. I'll give you a scenario. So a guy comes home, and him and his girl done broke up. So he already beefed about that, and maybe they had 1 or 2 kids, and she has 1 or 2 more, and the dude who she had the kids with, now she's with him. So he's trying to do his transition, deal with his kids, and he got to deal with the issue of he might still be in love with the girl, but she don't love him no more. She got a new dude. So there's conflict. So one of my points is, if you think of this rationally, that guy didn't take your girl. You left her. And if you leave somebody, whatever happens, happens.
Abandoned.
Yes. And he not only took care of them new kids, he took care of your kids while you was gone. So instead of you beefing with him, wanting to hurt him, actually you should be thanking him for what he did. Young dudes want to hear, they'd be like, yo, OG, what did you talk about? That's crazy. But it's not crazy. One of the things that we really do well here at TCRC is teach people to think rationally. And we don't do that. As young black men, we don't think rationally. We think about stacking paper. We think about, fat butt girls and big cars. We think about, stuff we see on videos. We don't think about the reality of building a black family. And how do you build a black family? By being there every day, by working hard, by get up early in the morning, by being on time. We have to focus on the reality of life. And so many times we don't do that.
I have a question.
Yes.
My name is Lavinia. Hello.
How you doing, Lavinia?
I'm fine, thank you. the robberies.
Mhm.
Did they recover the money?
Are you crazy?
Good question.
Same thing I was thinking about.
The only money they recovered was my last robbery. The police tried to shoot me. No, I tried to shoot the police, and they shot me instead. You know, that's the bank robbery. They got some money back. You know, the rest of them, oh hell no.
Okay.
That money's.
I have a question. My name is Sylvia.
How you doing, Sylvia?
So, did you invest any of that money, saved, or
You don't
like,
inve-
you know?
Listen,
So when you got out,
understand what a criminal lifestyle is. You know,
You said it earlier.
yeah, a criminal lifestyle is Vegas and Atlantic City and Cadillacs and sport cars and you know and the impulse nightclubs and you know downtown Center City. Yo, you know, very few people are smart enough to invest the money that they get, you know, and then you have your family who is, you know, along for the ride, and even though they don't know that you're robbing banks, you know they know you're involved in criminal activity, and you making it rain on everybody. You know, so no. Answer to that is no. Hell no.
I was so smart that I was like, he probably saved some money.
No. And you know the money that you did have, you know, when you go, you know, when you're incarcerated, that's you know dissipated. And the feds take cars and houses and apartments. I mean, you know, the feds is diabolical. You know, so it's impossible. I mean, there are some guys who you know come out of criminal activity with some paper, but very few. You know, folks come home and they're really starting over, and it's very difficult. You know, for a dude who's been making it rain for years to come home to a $12 an hour job. That's why so many people go back to prison because they be like, yeah, I can't do this. You know, 40 hours and this is my check right here. This. I used to get this to my kids, you know, to go and play with. You know? So it's a different mindset. You know, you have to actually transform yourself back into a civilian, back into a citizen. You know, you be in a warehouse working, you know, and somebody say something crazy to him and you want to, you know, pull your joint at him in the back of the head with it. And, damn, I ain't got no gun no more, you know. I'm a civilian now. I mean, I've got to act like a regular person because I never want to go back to the penitentiary.
Right.
You know, it's a mindset, you know, and some people are able to absorb that and really, truly, I mean, I said to myself, I did 25 years in the penitentiary. I came home, I was 55 years old. I'd given more than half of my life to the penitentiary. I'm never going back. You know, if I got to get a job on a trash truck, it don't matter to me. You know, but I have more skills than that, you know, so I was able to parlay it. But there's nothing that could happen to me other than somebody, you know, putting their hands on my kids or my grandkids, you know, 'cause I got some, you know, gorgeous little granddaughters, you know, you know, don't only go in that direction. But just in the natural scheme of things, there's nothing. And, you know, folks know you, they know your work. They be like, yo, man, you know, I got this for you. You can give me some money. You know, I came home, you know, some family members and brothers I knew blessed me a little, help me get back on my feet. Yeah, but you can't put a package on my hand, you know, you can't tell me nothing stupid to do, you know, to make you some money and make me some money. I will struggle and be broke. And I rode SEPTA for the first 2 years I was home. And I never rode SEPTA. To me, getting on SEPTA was a humiliating act. And you know how I did it? I pretended that the bus was my limousine. And the bus driver was my chauffeur. And I hated standing on corners waiting for the bus. So I got the bus schedules and I made sure, you know, I knew exactly when the bus was coming, so I would get off one bus, get on another bus, and I ain't out there more than, you know, 4 or 5 minutes. You know, or I'm doing something and I walk to the bus, you know, and the subway and the train. I mean, you know, these are the schemes that you have to put down to enable you to do the right thing. You know?
But
And-
excuse me, but don't you think, we're talking criminal justice.
Mm-hmm.
The system does not help. Okay, you go into prison. You said the word rehabilitation. You don't get rehabilitated when you're in prison.
You got to rehabilitate
it
yourself.
messes with mental. So everybody's not strong enough when they come home, but they don't have resources to acclimate them back into society unless they want to label them to start giving them services, but then that's all about $1.
So that's why, as a community, we have to make sure that we support places like TCRC Community Healing Center, other organizations that do this work, because rehabilitation is internal. I rehabilitated myself. The prison didn't care about me getting rehabilitated. Why should they? If I go home and do something wrong and I come back, I'm supporting their joint. They want to see me come back. You know, one of the things that really woke me up is when I came back for my second bit, I had my same number. That number was there waiting on me. They didn't give me a new number.
That was always gonna be your number.
Yeah.
Won't change.
That number's there waiting on me. So every time you come back, that's who you are. You aren't John Dye Harrell. You're 327-86066. That's who you are to us. And if you work in our factory, we're gonna make millions of dollars paying you $1 an hour and creating all these products and stuff.
And the prisons make more money to keep you in than out.
Yes, it's a vicious racket.
So it's like it's just a circle.
Yes. But we have to be aware of that, and we have to step outside of that and say, I'm not going to participate.
Tell them about the halfway house, the crazy stuff that goes in the halfway house that's funded by the feds.
Oh, the halfway house is crazy. So you go to the halfway house. All right, now, here's the halfway houses. All right. First, I'm getting ready to come home. And my counselor says, you got to go spend 6 months in the halfway house. And I say, why? I got a family. My third daughter invited me to come live with her because she never lived with me. All right, so that's what I'm trying to go home to. No, if you've been down for more than 10 years, you need to reacclimate into a halfway house. And I'm saying, I just need to get away from you white folks. That's what I really need, you know. So I go to a halfway house. Here's the halfway house set up. So you go there and you stay there. You get a pass on the weekend. If you've been there for a while, they give you a weekend pass to go see your family. But you got to go out, look for a job, and after every 15 days you don't find a job, they give you a write-up. If you get so many write-ups, they want to send you back to prison.
Wow.
You didn't make nobody hire you.
That is crazy.
Listen, it was extremely difficult to find a job, and I don't know how good your memory was, but I came home in 2009 in September, in the middle of a economic downturn, and it was a very, very brutal winter. You know, these last couple of winters we had ain't even been winters. I mean, ain't even been no snow. You know, the winter of 2009 was a brutal winter. You know, so I'm out there, you know, knocking on doors, trying to get a job from September to December, and I got a couple good jobs, and they wouldn't let me have the jobs because, all right, one job I got as a counselor for disabled kids, and they told me that I wasn't allowed to supervise people. What the hell are you talking about? Then I got